What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Something About Sports podcast. This is your host once again, Leon Edwards. Thank you guys for being here yet again for another episode. This is going to be episode 8.5. Going to talk about my local teams briefly. There's not a whole lot I want to get into today in this episode, so this episode may be a little bit shorter. But I've been feeling like I'm doing a little better job of keeping them a little bit shorter. But this episode, I've been trying to start recording this for a while now, but I'm watching Damian Lillard just go absolutely berserk in game 5 of this Nuggets Blazers series. I know this has nothing to do with Kansas City teams, but I'm a little distracted right now. I think he's up to 55 points or something crazy like that. He's hit 2 shots to tie the game up. So I've been a little distracted trying to get this episode going just to let you guys know what goes into this. There's games on every night for the NBA playoffs. So that's already a distraction. Anyway, you want to be tuned in, but I want to get you guys good content. Anyway, that's way off topic, but letting you guys know what my circumstance is right now. What's going on. But this episode is really dedicated to the local teams and talking about the Chiefs, talking about the Royals, who are really surging recently, and then also talking about some KU basketball stuff, which I haven't gotten a chance to talk about KU basketball for a little while. So I want to hop into all of that and get this ball rolling so we can keep this episode a little bit shorter and get it going. I'll do all of I've decided I think I'm going to start doing all of the little social media shout outs and all that stuff at the end of the episode. So you guys that have been hearing that and wondering if I just forgot, I'm just going to start doing it at the end. Anyway, I want to hop right in to the first thing I want to talk about. Patrick Mahomes was at his 15 and the Mahomies, his first annual 15 and the Mahomies golf challenge to raise money for charity. I mean, he did an interview while he was out there at the golf course and was just getting questions asked of him about the season and kind of different things like that. And one of the questions that's been getting around, his response to this question has been getting around, and I've seen people on all sides of it, so the question that was asked of Patrick Mahomes was, what records was he eyeing going into this season? He's broken a lot of records. He's had a historic start to a career, one that we've probably never seen from a quarterback. Dan Marino's probably close, but even Mahomes has already made it to more Super Bowls than Marino, and this is just going into year 4 of him being the starter. You still see that. Probably see Mahomes as the best start to a career ever. He's got all kind of different records through first few seasons and all that stuff. He was asked what record he has his eyes set on this year, and he said the only record he has his eyes set on is going 20-0 and not losing a game. And of course, with it being a 17-game regular season this year, you have 17 games in the regular season. You would have 3 playoff games, including the Super Bowl, and you'd be the Super Bowl champion. So he's including winning a Super Bowl as well, which is the goal every team should have. I really didn't have any issue with hearing him say that. I didn't think that his response put pressure on the team. I didn't take that as a guarantee from him or anything like that, but I've just been seeing people take offense to that, or take offense to him saying that was his goal for the season. But I guess what confuses me sometimes about this is I really wonder what other people think teams' goals should be. I don't think any coach or any player, you shouldn't aspire to go out and lose games. Everybody knows that it's almost impossible to go undefeated in just about any sport anymore. But to go in with the expectation of losing, that's also never really a winning formula. So I really have no issues with what was said. I've seen people take offense to it. Do I think the Chiefs will go 20-0? No, they're probably on the short list of teams where we could see that as a possibility going into this season. I don't see it happening for sure, I guess I could say. But of course, it's a possibility. They're on the short list. You never really know. And records are always made to be broken. There's still only been one undefeated season ever. We'll see how all that plays out. I don't anticipate it, not with how tough the Chiefs' schedule is, but I'm happy that's the goal of the team. I'm happy the team wants to go out there and win every game. And not only did he say he wants to win every game, but he made it clear that he wants it to be 20. Like, it's not just about winning every game. He wants to win a Super Bowl. And he wants to win every game until they get there. It's just, I think that's something that you would want to see, any team would want to see from their quarterback. And I guess it confused me a little bit seeing some people take issue with it. But I think that Patrick Mahomes being who he is, being the figure that he is for the sport right now, he's going to be just like a lot of the other top tier athletes in their sports. He's going to get love. He's going to get hate. It's just kind of part of the process and kind of part of that growth that he's going to experience throughout his career. So I'm happy to hear that my quarterback wants to win every time. That's definitely the moral of this. And I do think that kind of does bring into focus something else about Patrick Mahomes that I'm interested to see going into this next year. Just with the hunger and the competitiveness that he showed throughout his entire career, you could tell he genuinely hates losing. After coming off that Super Bowl being as bad as it was, with it being his worst career loss, having to hear about it all off season, having to have that marinate all off season, and then to see that materialize next season is going to be interesting to see how he comes out, how he responds, his demeanors. I think we're going to see a real angry version of Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be very determined. Does that mean it results in an undefeated season? No. Does that mean it even results in a Super Bowl season? That remains to be seen, just because of how hard it is to make it to 3 Super Bowls in a row in the NFL. But I definitely think that he's going to be on a mission. We're going to see a different side of Patrick Mahomes probably this year than we've seen before. And I'm excited to watch it and see how that all plays out. But that was really all I had on the Chiefs. I just wanted to bring that up, give my thoughts on it and what I thought about. That's been a conversation that's been going on for a while. Glad I'm getting a chance to at least put my 2 cents in on that. All right, so I'm going to let you guys behind the curtain just a little bit. I had made it through this entire podcast, and I forgot to talk about Julio Jones. I wanted to go ahead and put him back in the Chiefs section when I was talking about Patrick Mahomes instead of adding it to the beginning or the end. So that's why I'm just inserting it here and putting in this little spiel. But it's not going to be long. It will make the episode go a little longer. So I'm not just lying to you guys at the end. It originally was shorter than it's going to be. But I had to go ahead and put this in here because I've seen a lot of conversations about this. And honestly, I've talked about this so much that I forgot that I actually had not talked about it on the podcast yet. Julio Jones is available. That's something that I've talked about in my other podcast as well. He's available on the trade market. The Falcons are almost certainly going to trade him at some point at the beginning of this month, June. He's going to be on a new team. The rumors are that they were looking for a first-round pick and that there have been a couple of teams that have offered one. But I think the stickiest situation is that Julio Jones also wants to go to a contender. So the contenders don't always have the best first-round picks. I'm sure they've got some suitors who have better first-round picks but aren't contenders, but they probably want to take care of one of the best players in the history of their franchise. They probably got a little bit of sticky situations going on with that, some things that they want to figure out. But I just want to talk about it from the Chiefs' perspective. I have had conversations with people on both sides of this. I've seen a lot of people online talking about it, and I just don't feel like it's a smart move for the Chiefs to go after Julio Jones. Julio Jones is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He has been. He's one of the best receivers the NFL's ever seen. Let me go ahead and correct that. Not even just the NFL today. One of the best receivers in the history of the NFL. I've always been a big Julio Jones fan. I've loved him since he was at Alabama. I think he's a great guy, a great player, and I would love to have him on my team. But the combination of the finances of what it would take to pay him and the compensation that you have to send back to Atlanta, I think just makes it a move that probably isn't smart for the Chiefs to make. The Chiefs have been in all-in mode already for the last few years. They've made some moves that probably long-term aren't the best moves for them. And eventually, the chickens come home to roost if you continue to approach it that way. You can't continue to trade away first-round picks and try to build a roster around the $500 million quarterback. And I know you guys are fans. I'm a fan as well of the contract that Patrick Mahomes got. I know that it's team friendly. I know that it's not a horrible contract, but it still remains a fact that he's going to make a lot of money. He's going to take up a much bigger chunk of the cap than he ever has before when we've been able to pay guys like Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill on the offensive side of the ball, including offensive linemen. Before it was Fisher and Schwartz, now it's going to be Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney. When we've been able to pay those guys, and then I didn't even get into the defensive side of the ball. You got Tyrann Mathieu over there, Frank Clark, Chris Jones. These are all players who are in the top 5 highest paid players at their position in the NFL. That's good and dandy when your quarterback's not making a lot of money. But when he starts to make his big money, you're not going to be able to have that many guys making that much money on the roster. You have to start filling the roster out with guys from drafts. You have to. Those guys are cheap. First rounders are cheap for 5 years. Every other guy's cheap for 4. You have to figure out a way to fill the roster out with those guys. Out of all those guys that I just named, think about all of them that the Chiefs drafted. The Chiefs used draft capital to get Patrick Mahomes. He was a draft pick. Tyreek Hill was a middle round draft pick. Travis Kelce was a middle round draft pick. Chris Jones was a second round draft pick. You talk about all these guys that have continued to contribute to the team. I mean, that's not even talking about Eric Fisher, who I know he's not on the team anymore, but he's one of those guys who's been getting paid. Eric Fisher was a number 1 overall draft pick. Eventually, that's how you have to build the team. You have to get the supplemental guys. You're going to have guys you're paying big money to. That's just part of the NFL. That's part of building a football team. But you have to get those supplemental guys. And you talk about bringing in a guy who you have to give away a package of picks for, because the Chiefs are going to have a later pick. Everybody knows that the Chiefs' pick is going to fall probably after 27, 28. Ideally, it would be number 32, but you can't guarantee that. But we all know the Chiefs will probably end up in the AFC Championship game at least. So that pick's going to be a late first round pick. We all know that's going to be a late pick. Every other team knows that's going to be a late pick. They're probably going to want another pick as well, because there's going to be some earlier picks that other teams can offer. So the Chiefs will have to compete with other teams to get Julio Jones to start, and then you get him in on the books, and he's set to make $15 million this coming season and $11 million the 2 years after that. For a team that already has 2 other receiving options making over $10 million a year. So you talk about 3 receiving options on the offense making over $10 million, Julio Jones making $15 million. And then that's not even to talk about Joe Thuney, who's going to be making a big chunk of money this year, and Orlando Brown, who after this season is most likely going to be making a big chunk of money as well. That's just a lot of guys to have on big money deals on one offense when you have to put some attention to the defense. I know we've been drafting guys. I know they've been trying to go find scrap heap type players, but you can't just neglect the defense, invest all the money on the offense, and expect to win Super Bowl after Super Bowl. It's just not going to work that way. I guess I say all that to say that I would love to have Julio Jones on the team. I just think the compensation that you have to give up for him financially and draft capital, I just don't think it makes it worth it. Like, you don't need a Julio Jones type of player to upgrade the position of receiver. Would it make it one of the best offenses we've seen probably in a long time and potentially ever? I think so. Julio Jones is a guy who's just about guaranteed for 1,400 yards a year. We know what Tyreek Hill can do. We know what Travis Kelce can do. So that's 3 guys on the team. You're probably talking about 3 of the 5 best receiving threats in the entire NFL on one team. Of course, that's going to make the team great. The team's going to be awesome if you were to pull that off, but you don't necessarily need that. The team can be great with just an incremental upgrade and then still having your big 2 guys catching the ball from Patrick Mahomes. And that's not even mentioning Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I think everybody anticipates being more involved in the passing game this year. I think the Julio Jones thing, I think it's a great thing to think about, a potential what if. I just don't know if it would be smart for the Chiefs to pursue that right now. With everything else that's going on, you need those draft picks to build those building blocks on the roster. And then you also just need that financial flexibility. You got to think about Tyreek Hill's going to be up for an extension. I anticipate one or both of Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu getting an extension before this season even starts. So you got those guys already that'll probably reduce their cap hit for this year. But then after this year, their cap hit is going to be a little bit bigger. And you still have Julio Jones on the books for $11 million in the next 2 years as well. And that's not even considering the fact that he said he wants a new deal wherever he goes. So that changes things as well. He's going to want a new deal, which he will probably compromise and reduce his cap hit for the coming season. But I would highly doubt he'd be okay taking $11 million or less after this season. So he's going to make more money as well. You're just going to be in a situation where you're just continuing to load up and load up. You can only push money back so far before you still have to pay it. That money's going to come up on the salary cap at some point. I understand the salary cap's going up and everything like that, but the Chiefs have a lot of other priorities on this roster of guys they need to pay. You talk about Orlando Brown, he's probably going to end up being the highest paid left tackle in football after this coming season. That's coming off the books for the Chiefs. You talk about Chris Jones, who after this season is going to pretty much be up for an extension. He's just under contract guaranteed for this upcoming season. They could cut him after this year, and I believe he doesn't have a lot of dead money. I believe his dead money is less than his cap hit if they were to cut him. He's going to be looking for an extension at some point soon as well. Frank Clark's still on the books for a lot of money. I think he's gone after this year. I think Anthony Hitchens is gone after this year. But I already talked about Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu also both needing extensions. And I think it's just going to be a continued process of that. You're going to still have to probably pay Bashaud Breeland. I still think Bashaud Breeland ends up back in Kansas City. I don't really see why he wouldn't. So you're still going to have to pay him. You probably have to pay him a little bit more than you paid him last year, which I think he made like $4 or $5 million last year. Don't quote me on that. He's probably looking at somewhere in $6-7 million range. I think that you have to have that space ready to go as well. So there's just going to be a lot of different things. You don't know who's going to get cut. There's going to be some guys that are going to be cap casualties or camp casualties that the Chiefs may want to kick the tires on that may be a little bit more high value guys. So you just want to keep that flexibility. You don't want to fill it all up at just one position. I think getting Julio Jones would be overcorrect. And I do agree that the receiving core on this team could be better. You owe it to Cornell Powell to give him a chance to prove what you think you got out of him. You owe it to him to give him that opportunity as well. I think it's just I don't think it's a smart business move for the Chiefs long term. You got to look at it long term when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, plus him being locked up for a long time to come. You don't want to just win one more Super Bowl. You want to win as many Super Bowls as you possibly can. And to do that, you have to keep both sides of the ball competitive, and you have to keep the finances flexible to be able to keep a good team around your expensive quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is expensive. We love to talk about the team-friendly deal. By the time the deal is up, if it's the deal that it is now, it's going to look like a steal. I know all of those things, but that does not eliminate the fact that he is still expensive, and he's going to be more expensive than we've ever seen him be in the coming years. So that means you have to adjust in other places on the roster. They started to do that by loading up on the offensive line with cheap options. I think the right side of the offensive line going forward is probably going to be that area. You got Creed Humphrey. He's under contract now for 4 more years. You're going to have Trey Smith as well, who you're going to have under contract for 4 more years. Lucas Niang, you still got 3 more years out of him. And then, of course, you have your stopgap guys, Kyle Long. You have your Mike Rimmers and those guys. But you have to pinpoint those places on the roster to get cheap value out of, but you have to keep draft picks to do that. I think already doing the Orlando Brown trade, getting rid of some draft picks, I think that was enough for this offseason. I think you have to go a different route to improve, whether that be going on the scrap heap, finding like a D.D. Westbrook or somebody like that, wait until camp casualties, or just seeing what you have first, seeing if Byron Pringle can take a step, seeing if Demarcus Robinson, who I doubt, Demarcus Robinson has been around for a long time. I doubt he takes another step forward, but he may just at least be able to be more productive with more opportunity now that Sammy Watkins isn't on the team anymore. I think Mecole Hardman still has a year or 2 maybe where I'll give him a chance to watch and see. I think if he doesn't take any steps this year, you probably have to cut bait or figure something else out. But I do think he still is in a window of time where he could take another step in his development. So you got to see what that looks like first before you go out on a limb and you trade a whole bunch of draft capital and give a whole bunch of money to a guy at a position where you already are elite with 2 pass catchers and plus a running back that we know has the history of catching passes out of the backfield. You got to at least see what you have first before investing that much. And I know it seems like it would be fun. I know that it would be great to watch Patrick Mahomes throw the ball to Julio Jones, but on the business side of things, I think you just have to reassess that situation and see maybe where else you can use that money. So that's my 2 cents on Julio Jones. I wanted to get that out there. Sorry, I forgot to put that originally, and that's just going to make the episode a little bit longer, but I appreciate you guys for still listening, and I'll go ahead and continue with the next segment now. Next up, I wanted to talk about the Kansas City Royals. The Kansas City Royals, since going on that 11-game losing streak, they have won 11 of their last 17 and are on a pretty nice run right now. And it's even more impressive when you consider the fact that the Royals have Jorge Soler, who's not doing anything at the plate. You have Hunter Dozier, who's not doing anything at the plate. And then the bottom of the order, they come and go, but you have weapons there. But you have 2 guys who are absolute black holes right now in the lineup. And it's been good to see Edward Olivares. They did go ahead and call Olivares up. He was having a really good year in the minor leagues. He's had a couple good years in a row. He was good last year as well. We got a chance to see him. So getting to see him again and letting him get a chance is also really cool. It's been good to watch. The Royals have been good. Whit Merrifield's kind of gotten his groove back a little bit. Andrew Benintendi has been the Royals' best player through this stretch. He was the Royals' best player on the losing streak as well. I think after those first couple of weeks of the season, he's been the Royals' best player offensively. So he's having a really good year at the plate. He's been really fun to watch. Salvy Perez is hitting home runs left and right. It's just that this team they just have two extremes. We haven't really seen the middle ground from this Royals team yet of what they look like at base, like what their normal is, because we just see them going super crazy or we see them not really playing well. And depending on what the pitching is doing when they're not really playing well, they've been able to win games and get clutch runs and different things like that when they haven't been playing well to win some of those games. But if the pitching's been bad, then it's been bad for them in the win column as well. I think it's been fun to watch what they've been doing. The pitching has seemed to bounce back a little bit. Brad Keller's had a couple of good outings again. He's starting to get his feet under him for the season. I think that's one of the big things for pitchers. One of the big things for pitchers is getting their feet under them. And then sometimes when you have those bad performances, you continue to have those bad games in a row, things can snowball a little bit. I think it just was a snowball effect. The stuff was always there. We've seen Brad Keller prove himself to be really good for a few years now in Kansas City. I think we knew he was going to bounce back in some capacity, but we just didn't know when and what that was going to look like. But he's looked really good recently. He's having a good last couple of weeks, last couple of starts, which is very encouraging. Brady Singer's come down to earth a little bit. He's still been good in spots, but I think he can get got a little bit more so than even some of the other guys. And it's probably just because of those two pitches that I talked about before. It seems like teams are just sitting on the fastball. Or sitting on the slider, when just watching fastballs a lot and he gets got on that slider. There's a good success rate on it. It's not that they're getting it a whole lot, but people are having a good success rate and getting big hits. But the rotation's been good. Chris Bubich has been good since he's been inserted into the rotation as well. Danny Duffy is on the injured list. I don't think I've had a chance to talk about that. Danny Duffy's on the injured list, so he should be back here in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, Danny Duffy was the Royals' best pitcher by far this year before being injured. So he'll add another great arm once he makes his way back to the rotation as well. Irvin Santana got a chance to get a spot start in there. Didn't go that well, but they were pretty much planning for a bullpen game anyway. Other stories, Adalberto Mondesi finally made his season debut, and boy, did he look good. So he played a few games, or he played 7 games actually. He was in the lineup for all 7 of those games, I believe was that number. And he was playing really well. He was looking like the player that we've talked about. We've always known that the tools are there. He has the tools to be a 5. He has the tools to be a 5-tool guy. He's got all of the tools there. He's always shown those flashes. He was showing those flashes again this year. He is injured. He did pull his hamstring or tweak his hamstring. We don't know when we're going to get a chance to see him again, which is very unfortunate because I think he's one of the better building blocks on the roster right now as far as talent is concerned. You got good baseball players, but athletic talent is rare in baseball. When you have it, you have to take advantage of that. For guys like Adalberto Mondesi, with the speed and the power he has, with the build that he has, the defense he possesses, you got to really cherish that. So it sucks that to see him go back down. You hope he can get past these injury woes and get another opportunity to play at a big level because he was looking really well before he was injured. So I hate to see that happen to Adalberto Mondesi. I'm glad we got a chance to at least get to see him, though. That dude's a really good player. And I think we're going to see more big things coming from him down the road. So he's another guy I wanted to give a shout out to. Carlos Santana's been Carlos Santana. We know what he's going to bring you every night. Salvi, I gave him a little shout out. Something about Salvador Perez, and I think it's just, I don't even know. I think that what I'm going to say about him on the field is just a metaphor for what he has meant to this organization. He's a guy where you get those moments in baseball where it's like you're losing the energy. A team needs a spark. They need somebody to step up and get a big hit a home run, put a run on the board. something along those lines, make a big defensive play, whatever it is. But it seems like Salvador Perez is always the guy that answers that call. And it's just something that I think is just uncanny, even when he first came up. And I think back to this all the time. His first game when he first came up, I believe that game was in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to double check that to know for sure. Throwing out guys, getting big hits. Just think about the wild card walk-off hit that started it all for the Royals. It's uncanny what he's meant for the organization and for the team at different points. And it's something that we've continued to see even this year. We've continued to see him in those moments where the team really needs it the most. We've continued to see him deliver. And it's fun to watch because we're just, at this point, he's just tacking on to his legacy. He's already a legend for the Royals. He's going to make the Hall of Fame for the Royals. He's going to be one of those guys like a George Brett type of guy who's just revered forever within the organization. And we're just watching him continue to grow that star and build that in front of our eyes. That's been really fun to watch. It's been interesting to watch as well, to watch him lift the team as much as he has. That's been really fun to watch. Trying to think of other guys that I was wanting to shout out. Oh, Gutierrez. Kelvin Gutierrez came up. He was pretty much a guaranteed hit every game for a little while there, but he's looked really good defensively. I think he's infused a spark into the lineup. I think I like him playing third base. Hanser Alberto, he had his moments, but I think Gutierrez is a little bit more talented and a little bit better defensively to be an everyday third baseman. I've enjoyed watching him play at the position. We'll see what the organization thinks, about that in that regard, because Hunter Dozier's still lurking there. Hanser Alberto, like I said before, he's still lurking there. You got him that can also play over there at third. We'll see how they decide to keep this thing moving, but I do want to give him a shout out. He's been looking pretty good so far, especially defensively. I've enjoyed watching him play defense. I think him and Mondesi both, I think they gave the team a lift defensively for sure, which was something that the Royals, we've been used to them being pretty good defensively when they're good. To see them struggle a little bit, even at times when they've been good this year, is something that's a little bit different for us. That's kind of always been part of the Royals being good, has been being good defensively, being good on the base paths, different things like that. So seeing the defense lift up a little bit as well over these last few weeks. I think the losing streak ended on like May 15th or May 16th or something like that. Don't quote me on that date, but it was around that time. Since that time, you've seen the Royals pick up in a lot of different areas. And it's been fun to watch. I'm enjoying watching the Royals. I'm going to keep tuning in this year. I've been enjoying the ups. The downs have been a little bit too down for me, especially that 11-game losing streak. But they got a chance to make up some ground. The Royals are back over 500 and playing well. So we'll see how long this train can go. And hopefully at some point during this season, we actually see who the real Royals are. Which one of these teams that we've seen at different times is actually the real Royals. So as this season progresses, that's what I'm watching for, is which one of those versions can be the more consistent version throughout the year. I'm excited to continue watching the Royals. Those of you guys that have been watching every game like I have, I'm sure you're feeling the same way as me. We still don't really know who this team is, which is crazy, being that it's now June. Sometimes you can start to shape an opinion of kind of what a team's going to be, but you just seen these insanely high highs and low lows that you still are skeptical. You don't really know exactly what to make of everything. So we're still filling that out, which is fun. Baseball season is long. You need those different things like that to keep you engaged. We'll keep watching that, and I'll keep on reporting on it and letting you guys know what I think about the team as the season progresses. I'm making really good time in this. We might actually be less than half an hour on this episode. That'll be the shortest episode of the podcast ever, I believe. Maybe my draft preview was a little bit shorter too. Maybe that came in under 30 minutes, but I think it might have came in a little over 30 minutes. But either way, this is going to be a really short episode unless I just go off on a crazy tangent talking about KU basketball. But I'm really excited about what KU basketball is doing. I'm pretty sure I name dropped Remy Martin in my last .5 episode and said that I would love to have KU get him. Remy Martin, as soon as he became available for transfer, he was going to be the best transfer on the market this offseason over anybody else. He's going to be the best player available. And as soon as they started talking about KU getting him, I was excited because Remy Martin has burned KU multiple times. He burned KU in the field house. He burned KU on his own home court. He's been a 19-point per game scorer for the last 2 years. He's a really good scorer. He's not a great shooter, but a good scorer overall. And he can get you some points. And that's what the Jayhawks need. Kansas basketball was lacking that last year. You just didn't really have anybody that could go get you a bucket. You had guys that could score, but there's a difference between a guy who can go get you a bucket and a guy that can score points. Ochai Agbaji can score points. He could make threes. He could play within the flow of the offense and get you a lot of points, but he couldn't just go get you a bucket when you needed one. You didn't really have that guy last year. Towards the end of the season, when Marcus Garrett was seeing the writing on the wall for his senior year, you started to see him try to take that mantle and be that guy, but that's just really not his game, and he was already playing out of position. That was something that you really wanted to see from somebody else, but you didn't really get that elsewhere. And so this year, you're bringing in these guys that can do that, these guys that you can go get a bucket. And Remy Martin was the best of the bunch on the market, and you went and got him. What a big move by Coach Self and the staff. What a big move for the program to get Remy Martin for a season. That's going to be huge going into next season. And then another big get as well, Jalen Coleman-Lands, transfer, a really good three-point shooter. Another thing that the team lacked last year. A 7th-year senior. He's been around the block a little bit. So he's been to a few different schools. He's had his fair share of opportunities at other places. And now he gets to finish his career off at KU. And he's a good player as well. He's like he at the time when we got him, he seemed like an Ochai Agbaji replacement type of player. As a three-point shooter, the defensive guy that you want to see out of him with the size that he has. He was coming across like that. And I think when we got him, a lot of people automatically assumed that Ochai Agbaji was gone because that was the last open scholarship. And then later on down the road, either the next day or a couple of days later, Sidney Curry, the JUCO transfer, who's actually been committed to KU for a really long time, decided to reopen his recruitment. So that does leave another scholarship for KU to play around with, whether that be Ochai Agbaji coming back from the draft or if you go and get somebody else. You have the feeling Bill Self's not done if he doesn't have to be. The way that this roster has transformed from last year to this year, I think it's a good thing. There's going to be some continuity things that they have to get with, but you infused a lot of talent into the program, into the roster, and I think Coach Self did a really good job of doing that. And that's what he said he wanted to do, and he just continues to show that was the goal. I think with the get of Remy Martin, with the get of Jalen Coleman-Lands, it probably propels KU into the preseason top 5. If you get Jalen Wilson and Ochai Agbaji back, I think Jalen Wilson is back. I think it's almost safe to say that unless a team just guarantees that they're going to take him in the first round, I'm almost certain he'll be back. He seems like a guy that'll come back and have a really big impact next year. I actually see Jalen Wilson with, as far as a college player, I see him with unlimited potential. I can see Jalen Wilson winning the Conference Player of the Year because he's a really talented kid. He didn't get a chance to show that last year as far as his offensive talent, but that's what he was most known for, was an offensive player and a shooter. And it came through a lot early in the season, and then teams figured him out a little bit. He hit a little wall, but I could see him developing that. And then with the way that he plays defensively and gives his effort and the way that he rebounds the basketball, I could definitely see him being an All-American type player, a Conference Player of the Year type player. I think he'll be back. Ochai Agbaji, I think that's a tough one to call. I really don't know for sure. That's a really tough one to call, and we'll see how that all plays out. But if they both come back, KU's probably a preseason top 3 team. You just think about the possibilities that team has and the amount of talent that team is racking up. I haven't even got a chance to talk about David McCormick all offseason. He was looking like a Big 12 Player of the Year type player down the stretch of the Big 12 season and into the tournament before COVID hit him as well. You got him coming back as well on the inside. I think KU is going to be really good. I really what they've done with the roster so far, and I wanted to get a chance to share my thoughts on Remy Martin and Jalen Coleman-Lands. There's really not enough that I can say about Remy Martin just after watching him play for a few years, and I think that now getting Coleman-Lands, you see what Coach Self was going for this offseason and the guys that he wanted to bring into the program. He was going for guys that aren't afraid to go get a bucket, that he knows if he tells them to go get a bucket, they at least have the confidence to do and they have the skill set to do. We'll see. we'll see how that all plays out. Of course, they still have to go out on the court and earn it. We've seen plenty of KU teams before with a lot of promise going into the season. I don't remember a KU team where this much turnover happened, though, especially among the underclassmen. It's not something that you normally see in the KU program or under Bill Self, but I would say it's refreshing, and it's probably something that's going to become more normal. This much turnover, I think, is probably more attributed to just the last few classes probably not being as dominant now as you would like them to be. You probably end up, if in a perfect world, you probably end up having a guy like Tristan Enaruna or Jethro Muscadin still on the team, and then adding around those guys, having a couple of those pieces. But you think about all of those guys leaving, you have to bring a lot of people in. And then with the way that the transfer rules have changed now, you're in a situation where you can bring all those guys in and they can play right away, which is not something that was a possibility before. I think it's a perfect storm, and that's why we see this turnover with the KU roster. It'll be fun to see what happens with this, and I'll keep updating this. I'll keep following these things as time goes and giving you guys updates on how the roster is shaking out and when guys come back and what other teams are doing as well. I think Gonzaga is pretty much clearly the preseason number one. I don't think anything at this point is going to change that. But there's going to be a lot of talk about who people think are the biggest contenders to them, and I think KU's right in that conversation if they get their guys back. We'll just continue to watch that. We'll continue to see. This episode is going to end up right around 30 minutes after I give you guys my little final spiel, which is something that hasn't happened in a while. I appreciate you guys for continuing to be here and listen, continuing to support as you have. It means a lot. And I say that every time, and I mean it every single time. It means the world that you guys are doing that, because that makes me keep wanting to do it. It makes me keep going. So I appreciate that. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, @sports_podcast, something about sports on YouTube as well. Email me with any inquiries, sasports913@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate me. Hey, I appreciate you guys once again. Reach out to me. Don't hesitate to ask me to cover certain things or talk about certain topics. If there's things going on in the sports world that you want to hear me talk about, I'm open to it. I haven't really gotten a whole lot of requests. I did get a couple. I have gotten a couple and gotten a chance to cover those things. So thank you to those people who have reached out to me and continue to engage. It's much appreciated as well. That's all I really have for you guys today. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Those of you that like a long episode, I'm sorry this one isn't that long. I'll try to make it up to you in episode 9. So we'll see how all of that goes. But I really appreciate everything and appreciate you guys for still being here. Talk to you guys soon, and until next time.